You have to use the current instruments, the current tools in order to stay competitive. Like, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, there were a lot of people that didn't use the internet and their businesses ran just fine, but that is no longer true, right? This is the same thing with large language models and other applications of AI. You have to stay abreast of the current technologies and use them prudently in order to prosper and succeed long term. You might get away for a while without doing so, but long term you have to.
Hi, I'm Adam Gower, founder of GowerCrowd.com, where we help real estate syndicators find more investors. Welcome to the Easy Win AI Real Estate Show, exploring AI's impact on the real estate industry. Each episode offers practical tools, competitive AI strategies, and expert insights. For essential news and updates, visit easywin.ai and sign up for our free newsletter with actionable how-tos like how I added hours to my day by creating this clone of me you're watching and listening to right now. easywin.ai, the only newsletter you need on real estate and AI. Hi, and now back to The Real Me. My guest today is Rod Turner, who is CEO and founder and chairman, he told me, of Manhattan Street Capital. Now, I met Rod some years ago, actually shortly after the Jobs Act passed, because Rod decided to pursue the Reg A, Regulation A avenue to assist companies in raising capital. It's a very different kind of marketing when you are raising capital from non-accredited investors. You'll learn about that during today's show. Than it is to raise money for Reg D 506C, which is accredited investors for real estate. So what triggered my interest in asking Rod to join me today on the podcast was that he sent an email encouraging me to test his chatbot that he had trained and loved. And so we did test it, and we tried it, and we implemented it on the Gower Crowd and the EasyWin websites. And it works really well. And so I figured, all right, I'll give him a call. He's one of the few people who is definitely testing some of the same kind of things that we are. See what he's up to, find out more about it. And that is exactly what you're going to hear about. Today, you're going to learn a lot about chatbots, how they work, some of the pros and cons, how to train them, how to use them, etc., etc. It's very cool. If you've not signed up for my newsletter, go to easywin.ai and sign up there. There's lots of information about what it is. You can always unsubscribe. We send out how-tos and all kinds of guidance on how you can raise capital for your real estate projects. And sometimes we concentrate on how to leverage AI to make that even more effective. All there at easywin.ai. All right, enough of that. Rod Turner, Manhattan Street Capital. Here he is. Rod, it's good to see you again, actually. It's been a while. We were just talking about that. How long do you think it's been? It's got to be years, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I've lost track of the time, 3 or 4 years easily.
That's right. Yes, you didn't have glasses then, and you had black hair, so I know it must have been a long time ago.
Well, Christ, yeah. Age is actually passing, like age is catching up with me, apparently.
I'm just kidding. All right, so I'll tell you what, so we're going to talk about Manhattan Street Capital and what's going on in the Reg A world. I'm really interested in catching up with you. But what really prompted me to give you a call is that we've been putting this series together on how AI is being integrated by capital raisers. I got an email from you encouraging me to test RodChat or something.
RodBot, yeah,
RodBot.
Yeah, chatbot, RodBot. Yeah.
Okay, and then you told me that you found one, and we tested it. We've been testing a bunch of them, and we actually really like the one that you found, and so I've incorporated it onto my website.
Well done.
Tell me, what is RodBot? And how did you get to us? Tell me the kind of the back. Actually, why don't you start with who was Manhattan Street Capital?
Yeah,
high
there
level,
you go.
Because to fit into the real estate. I know you do other stuff, but real estate, capital raising. And then let's get to RodBot.
Yeah. So I launched. I've had the good fortune to be a key player or have a key founding and management role in 6 prior successful high-tech startup companies. And I launched Manhattan Street Capital 9 years ago, 9.5 years ago now, actually, because of Reg A plus. And the Reg A plus is our sweet spot. We do other things, Reg D and Reg S particularly, but Reg A plus is our sweet spot. And we work in the real estate space, which I know is relevant to your audience, as well as in some other relevant spaces. And we help companies. I suppose we're how we're unique is that we are a boutique. We're selective. We're not about doing lots and lots of offerings. We're about adding value to a relatively small select group of companies that we believe in strongly, and adding value before, during, and after the offering, and then partnering for the long haul. So that differentiates us. And we do two things. We provide advisory services to guide companies as to if they should do this and then how they should go about it in the most likely to succeed manner. Help them configure their offerings in a way that suits the market best, that makes the cost of acquisition of investors as low as is reasonably possible. And then bring in the relevant service providers and project manage and advise on the whole process, wherever relevant and where regulatory regulations allow, which is in most places, as long as we're advising. We don't have the authority to determine what the offering should be. The client decides that, for example. So that's one part of it, is bringing in the right service providers, not bringing in service providers that used to be good but are burned out or over expensive, and avoiding those that are too busy right now to be responsive.
Right.
Obvious things, right?
Yeah, that's kind of a common problem that we find in real estate as well with subcontracts. They offer good,
Yeah,
but then never show up.
yeah.
But Reg A, for
Not often.
example, just to clarify, Reg A is allows you to raise from non-accredited investors up to 75 million. And it used to be called, I don't know if it is now, but when it first came out, a mini IPO. I'd heard
Well, that's right. Yeah, that term still is used somewhat. I don't tend to use it as much because it sort of belittles the process. But it is a simpler way to go public. You can go public on the NASDAQ or the NYSE via an underwritten IPO or a direct listing, actually. You don't have to use an underwriter, which few people are aware of. But you don't have to list anywhere. And you can list on alternative trading systems, ATSs for short, the new kind of exchange, which I'm sure you have brought your audience up to speed on. So you have a lot of flexibility, and you can not list altogether. But one of the benefits of Reg A Plus is that it provides liquidity for all the founders and the past investors, as well as the new investors in the company that's raising money. So,
so,
yeah,
so you and I inhabit the same ecosystem in a sense, but I
yes,
know that you
yes.
go beyond real estate. You do Reg A. I'd say almost all of the work that we do is 506D offer. I'm sorry, 50 Reg D 506C
Yeah,
offerings,
yeah, yeah,
accredited
yeah.
investors. But nevertheless, the capital formation, world.
Yeah.
So, how have you been incorporating AI, and what inspired you to develop RodBot, not RodSpot, but RodBot?
Yeah, yeah. So essentially, um, it turns out that you can do some pretty impressive things
Mm,
with large language models. And we are using ChatGPT 4.0 Pro Edition. So people who use our RodBot are getting free access to the Pro version of GPT 4.0. But it's become rather good, and it keeps on getting better, as you know. And what we've done is we've added regulatory guidance to it. So, and this is an ongoing process as well. I keep on improving it. So as we add more content, it knows all of our knowledge base, all of our blogs, all of our FAQs, all of our videos, and the transcripts of those videos. So it's got all that learning base, as well as what else is available on the internet. So it's a pretty rich source of information. And then it's using my style of discussion, because I've told it to do that, as you do with these things. And essentially, my experience is that a lot of the time people want to discover how to go about, CEOs and CFOs want to discover how to go about raising money. They don't want a sales call at this point. They just want to check it out, and they want to do it productively. So we're accelerating that by an order of magnitude, because you can do so much. And we're getting some really sophisticated questions coming in.
really?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was one particular one where a CEO, and again, we don't know who it is that's asking these questions. If they want to, they can follow up with us. This is anonymous. I see the questions and the answers, but I don't know who asked them. The public doesn't see the questions or the answers, so it's relatively private, almost completely private, because I don't know who's asking those questions. But we went one CEO went to about 6 levels of follow-up questions asking about how to solicit in a Reg D 506C and a 506B, and you know how different that is,
Right.
what the restrictions are in a 506B. And frankly, as I started going down that rabbit hole, I was quite worried that our RodBot would have misadvised them, and it didn't. It did a really good job, and there aren't that many securities attorneys who could have answered the questions as
That's
well
really interesting.
off the cuff
So,
versus
so
having to
let's
go
jump back a
research.
second because you've answered my question, assuming that everybody understands exactly what you're talking about. But we are talking about a chatbot
Hmm.
on your website
Hmm.
that has been trained, right? So
Hmm.
you have
Yes,
trained it. So let's just back
custom.
up a little bit. You found a particular supplier is the wrong word, but anyway, particular chatbot that
Yes,
you really like. And as I mentioned, we've been testing a bunch of them
yeah, and it's good.
and generally unhappy. And
Yeah,
then the one that you are using just out of the blue just seems to be really excellent, actually.
yeah.
So tell me about your process for finding it and then training it. Like, how did you find this
Well, yeah.
particular
So the
one?
finding part, I mean, it's a moving target, right? So I've been plugged into a few of the AI spaces. I've been looking at AI, machine learning for 5 or 6 years, and wanting to do things with it. So since the beginning, when ChatGPT first became a thing, we've been paying attention, and there's some newsletters. Nowadays, there's so much content advising. So I would say today, how I would do it would be a little different, but it's not difficult to do searches to discover, which are the top ranking or the most highly thought of custom chatbot creation tools.
Mm.
So I was using one of the online newsletters, and I don't remember the name of it right now. I would rattle it off immediately if I had it at the top of my mind, but it's one of a few, or one of many. So
Mhm.
it wasn't hard to find candidates, and then it was a matter of checking them out and testing them out.
So, what
And I
were
would
the
say
biggest problems that you found with them, Rod?
the biggest problem, I mean, it was pretty quick to narrow down to this one. And then
Right.
using it, the problem was the learning curve and some of the weirdnesses of the way that they set it up. You
Mm.
know, and frankly, as much as anything else, it's been difficult. In my view, some of the large language model companies are cheating. So, for example, we host our website, we have all this expertise there to help CEOs and CFOs identify should they do a Reg A plus or another online offering, and if so, what are the nuances, the times, the
Mm.
cost, and all the other things about it. What are all the different details and nuances? So, at first, I didn't want the large language models to copy our data, learn from it, and then spout that out to anyone that comes along, which is exactly what their business model is, and that's what they do. So we turn that. There's an indicator you can set on the site that turns that off. So they're not allowed, theoretically, if they follow the rules, they're not allowed to learn from your content. I
Okay.
did that. And then I noticed that the organic search volume on our website was dropping off significantly because Google with Gemini, their own large language model, was not therefore admitting, at least if they were using our data, they weren't admitting to it, so they wouldn't show us as a source of the information when they would do searches for people. So I
Mm.
turned that on, which is to say, I allowed the large language models to use our data to learn from. And when
Mm.
I did that, then we started getting good credit again in
Okay, so I'll
more
tell you what,
good.
let's just talk about that for a second, because I
Yeah,
also wonder about this.
yeah.
And my view is, what the heck? I
Hmm.
mean, look, everything that I feed when I train our bots, I'm
Hmm.
basically using transcripts from all my podcasts, how many
Hmm.
ever hundreds of
Yeah,
those there
yeah,
are,
yeah, yeah.
ones that I've been on,
Yeah,
my website,
yeah.
and it's all public anyway. I mean, it's already out there. It's not like
Well, yeah,
it's
you're
some
right.
kind of
But you're
repository
right.
of hidden information somewhere.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, that's a pragmatic view, and that's the view that I've chosen to adopt myself. Not my initial view, but that's my current view.
Mm.
Although the point I want to make here is that from doing tests that I conducted carefully, some of them were cheating anyway because they were all, even though I'd set the indicator not to learn from our info, they had learned from our info because I did tests to see, and they had answers that they could only have got from our knowledge base,
I see.
even when we had said don't use our knowledge base. So that's the main issue.
Mm.
I don't actually trust some of the players out there to not do. To follow the indicator, you set the
To
switch
do
that says
what
no,
they
no, no, don't
right,
learn from me. They go
right.
ahead and do it anyway, and I'm
Okay.
sure that's a whole different topic that we don't need to dwell on.
I gave up on privacy a very long time ago.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
really bad to say that. Tell you something, Rod. I do remember a friend. I actually remember the moment I spoke to somebody for the first time who bought something on Amazon.
Hmm.
Actually, I won't mention his name. It's okay, but it was in Japan. Actually, he's quite a famous fellow here,
Yeah,
and he bought something on Amazon, been delivered to him. And this was in the mid 90s. I mean,
yeah,
how long that is ago.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
just thought, oh my God, he's out of his mind. He gave his credit card to some liar.
Right,
He's
right,
out
right,
of his mind.
right.
Eventually kind of get over that. But anyway, all right. So what were the biggest problems with when you were training these
Yeah.
various
So
bots? What were
yeah,
the
so
biggest problems you
given
found?
that this is a very highly regulated market and business that we're in, the
Mm.
biggest fear that I had was that the chatbot would cross the line and say things it couldn't say, and it did that in
Like,
a couple.
do please invest in this company.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a really
stuff
good
like
one.
that. Yeah, we didn't have that, but we had things of that ilk, make
Right.
representations we're not allowed to make. So whenever I see any of that,
Ah,
then I give it more guidance not to do that.
interesting.
But there haven't been too many problems. There's been some issues where it hasn't got imaginative, but it's misinterpreted information, and
Mm.
so I've had to essentially give it further guidance
That's
as
the one
to
that you have now, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. So it's
Okay, because it.
constantly improving. I keep on tweaking it.
So what I liked about it was its claim not to hallucinate.
Yeah, yeah,
So and we actually find it again compared to all the others that we've tested, really very good.
yeah,
Actually, very
yeah, yeah.
reliable and less likely to hallucinate. But for that one person who doesn't know what hallucinating means and what kind of problems, just explain. Would you to like
Yeah,
exactly what's involved programming? What is the
yeah, yeah.
process for
Well,
training a
hallucination
bot
is
properly?
yeah, it's literally where sometimes a large language model will make things up. It literally makes things up, whether they're true or false. And sometimes they're right. The problem comes in my view when the style of communication is confident. It's like when you deal with somebody who talks with great confidence and certainty, like you ask directions from somebody and they give you precise directions with a
Mm.
very confident delivery. You believe you're going to get to the place you're going. Turns out they had no clue and they were sending you to the wrong place. That's what happens sometimes with some of the large language models. I don't. You see a lot less of it now than you used to because they've got better. And
Mm.
in a situation like ours where we're constraining the environment. It's all about raising money, Reg A plus, Reg D, Reg S. It's a more constrained environment, and that we've brought all our information to the table, and it's learned from that. So it's a drastic reduction in the risk of a hallucination. We haven't had any hallucinations in our experience, so that's good.
That's very good. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's really it's good to hear, and that's why we actually decided to go in on this. And just the last point on this again, because it is
yeah,
interesting, I think. So you train it by advising it to look at certain websites and
yeah, yeah,
uploading transcripts, and so
yeah.
you're providing it with its knowledge base essentially to
Yes,
do
exactly.
scores when it answers questions. But you also talked about tweaking it, and so just
Mhm.
explain what that process is a little bit as well. What give a couple of examples for somebody.
Yes, yes. So, for example, literally, I've told it to include a recommendation to consider Manhattan Street Capital as the offering platform because our fee structure is drastically less expensive than our competitors, and it's easier to use for the investor. And it plugs into the marketing system better to make for a lower cost raise. So, I tell it to do that, and then I tell it to do it subtly, and then it introduces that subtly as a recommendation in the part of where relevant, where it makes sense. So that's a sales use for it. And then, similarly, um, I want it to recognize that there are relevant situations where you want a broker dealer or an underwriter, and then there are situations where you don't want to spend the money, and perhaps they wouldn't really do anything anyway because it was at the front end of an offering, and they won't really go to bat at the front end. You have to prove that it's successful already before they'll actually add value in many cases. So telling it that, giving it guidance so that it manages and doesn't over-represent the value of a broker dealer to a company raising money, because
Very
frankly,
interesting.
a lot of CEOs amplify the value of a broker dealer beyond the real anyway. They think, wow, if you get a broker dealer signed up, that's it, that's my job done.
They'll just wire the money on
Absolutely.
Monday. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. So those sorts of things, those sorts of nuances, but
All right, so I do have a question for you specifically.
yeah,
Right, so you assist, to be clear, you assist your clients in doing what are effectively kind of they're not exactly, we just talked about, not IPOs, but they are offerings,
yeah,
public offerings for acquisition of or investment in securities.
yes.
So when a deal goes live with one of your clients, and I
Hmm.
ask you this because this is actually what I'm thinking of doing. So I'm just wondering if you've tested, thought about it, one,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
tested it if you've not, is that when a new offering goes live,
Hmm.
there is a lot of information. There's a lot of information about
Yes,
the company, the background of the
yes, yes,
company, offering documents. There's
yes, yes,
just a vast amount of information.
yes,
Investors have inquiring minds.
yes,
They
yes.
want to know. So,
Hmm.
have you considered or have you actually installed a custom GPT chatbot on an offering page so that it is
So we haven't.
trained with
This is a.
all
This is
that?
an. Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand. That's a good question. It's an intriguing question for two reasons. Yes, it would be a good idea to do it,
Mm.
and where it would become a problem is if we have a broker dealer involved, because FINRA, the regulator, would probably react adversely to that, because the idea that there could be the possibility of hallucination
It's
might.
just a wrong answer in
That's the
general,
wrong
a
answer.
bad
Yeah.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would be really nervous about it. But if there was a broker involved, I think it would be a no-no altogether. And
Mm.
what'll happen with us with Reg A Plus is that we'll often encourage our client to add a broker dealer after qualification, because we don't want FINRA to slow down the whole offering going live. But adding a broker dealer just to get into Texas and Florida in particular, to raise money easily in those states. You can do it by filing directly with Texas and Florida, but that's time consuming and expensive. Not expensive, actually. It's time consuming and difficult. But if they add a broker dealer, maybe that happens by the time FINRA has blessed it, and that takes 3 or 4 months or something. And then we start accepting the people who've made reservations in the meantime in Texas and Florida. But the minute the broker dealer is on board, then we should not have a
But
custom
if you don't have a
chatbot.
broker dealer,
Then I think then it makes a lot of sense, as long as somebody like you or like me, somebody who knows the space, is very carefully monitoring it to make sure that there is no hype, none of the things that you're not allowed to
ah,
do, because you can't
right.
stretch the truth, you can't make predictions. So it's going to take a lot of preparation to
Mm.
put the guidelines in place so the chatbot doesn't do stuff that regulatory wise you're not allowed to do. Oh, we estimate that, we predict that. You can't do any predictions in a Reg A Plus, because we're protecting the general public from being misled by overzealous CEOs and entrepreneurs.
Interesting. All right, so it's a really interesting space. Rod, what else other than RodBot are you looking at in terms of technological advancements for your systems as you raise
So
capital for
two
clients?
things: use of large language models in drafting of email content, which
Oh,
needs to be reviewed by a human to make sure that it doesn't stretch the truth in some way that's not allowed. We're actually doing some of that. And creating content, it's very dangerous again, but as long as you keep humans involved, you can generate a good content
what kind of
using.
email content? What kind of emails, Rod?
So what I'm thinking about is auto response. So not, well, semi-automatic response. You have an engagement with a potential investor, a prospective investor, and they send in a response email, and then having the chat GPT or equivalent construct an email response, which is then reviewed by a human before it's sent to save
Ah.
time. I mean, there are so many uses for
And
this technology.
it's funny that you say that because I hear people talking about email kind of helps me speed up my emails.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I have become used to extremely brief emails, sending
Yeah.
really, but I can't imagine any tool being able to respond or even like by the time I've finished asking how should I reply to this email, I could have answered them, I could have replied.
Well, yeah, but you're a special case because you're an excellent communicator and you do a lot more of it. I think that's my perspective of you. But in addition, if you imagine that you get 200 of these a day because you're doing a lot of marketing and doing a lot of outgoing emails,
Ah,
then is when it comes into its
like
own.
investor
Yes,
queries kind of thing
yes,
about
and
I see.
investor responses to outgoing emails and dealing with them, they need to be brief. And I have a lot of examples internally of
Mm.
being really brief, where actually that's the reason they're successful is because they're brief. Because you send somebody an email this long, the
They
likelihood
won't
they're
read
going to
it.
actually, they won't even start reading it because it's
Right.
too long, it's overwhelming. So those sorts of things are part of the puzzle. We're working with a email company that is a startup email company that we're working with exclusively, and they're doing amazing things, in part using ChatGPT for constructing responses to emails, but also the way in which they do things is uniquely smart. Very, really brief emails that actually get people's attention and get a response versus overwhelming people.
That's really interesting. And does that integrate directly with your email platform? Like if you use Gmail or something, it integrates directly or?
Well, you can do that. We aren't doing that because that's one of the things this company is doing uniquely well is that they've vertically integrated. They do everything in the email space in order to make the whole thing more efficient. Because these days,
Oh, I see.
as you know, the email service providers have got more and more restrictive and more tight. So it's so much more difficult to do emails or outreach marketing emails. I mean.
I see. That's interesting. All right. And then what other uses? Talk about content
Well,
production.
yes. So something that's near and dear to my heart is to, and this is something we could have done 6 years ago, which is when I started wanting to do this, but I didn't have access to a big enough list. And it's more apparently exciting to do things in AI now than it was prior to ChatGPT. So it's a lot easier to raise money for these things now. But essentially, it's possible using AI and machine learning to learn the preferences of human beings as to what they might invest in. It's very obvious, and that's really what Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and others, but those three especially, do really well right now, using AI to figure out the characteristics of their member base and what investment offerings they're more likely to enjoy. But I think it's likely that there's tremendous opportunity to do a better job of that. And that's something that I'm looking into.
Fascinating. Now, all right. So let's talk about kind of bigger picture stuff.
Mhm.
And then I've got three sign-off questions for you, kind
Yeah,
of rapid fire sign-off questions.
yeah.
What's going on in the world? I mean, I know that you sometimes do real estate. It's not a primary
Mhm.
focus of you. It's the only
Yeah.
thing we do. But what are you seeing in the market overall? How have you seen the uptake of Reg A? I think that when we first spoke, I think it was
Mhm.
very shortly after you formed Manhattan Street Capital. It's a long time ago when we first spoke. We have
Yeah,
spoken
yeah,
since then, but when we first spoke. So,
yeah.
what have you seen with the market? There's been interest rate hikes. There's been a lot,
Mhm.
in the real estate world. It's the whole, story of its own. But
Yeah.
how's the world according to Rod Turner been over
So,
the last few years with
yeah,
capital
yes.
raising? Yeah.
Well, yeah. So the space, there's been a few factors. Quite a few of them are reducing. The negative effect is reducing as we speak, but there's been obviously the Fed raising interest rates and taking money out of the market. I mean, during 2020, 2021, they were actually flooding money into the market. They were buying equities, which everyone doesn't know. They were actually buying equities and lending money into the market copiously. So they did an awful lot to make the market rather bubbly, which was fun, obviously, and obviously limited scope and time for that. Now they've been doing the reverse. It's been a lot less fun, right? So that's one big factor, and that is gradually mitigating. Inflation has caused a lot of people to have to tighten their belts of necessity because the cost of living has gone up so much. without incomes necessarily matching that. So that's made life more difficult, but that's getting better as the Fed is showing that they're reducing interest rates. There's been a lot of money that had apparent profits, paper profits for people in crypto that's been wiped away by Sam Bankman-Fried and by regulatory action. And that is mitigating too. The regulatory environment seems to be getting a little less freezing cold and a bit warmer.
Mm.
So that's helping.
Has it
And we're
been
seeing
harder to raise money in the last couple of years for you?
Yes, it has for
It
sure. Yeah,
has,
yeah.
yeah.
And then Apple making it more difficult to effectively use pixel tracking to make
Right.
marketing targeting very efficient.
Mm.
So those are the factors that have made for a more difficult context.
Mm.
But they're all getting gradually better at this point, right? That's the
Mm.
good thing, is that there's various innovations going on, or the factors are weakening. So inflation is coming down, interest rates are coming down,
Mm.
the crypto space is recovering, and people are figuring out how to make marketing more efficient despite Apple's blocking tactics.
Mm.
So it is getting better as we speak. That's the nice thing about it. Like most cycles, they go up and they
Right.
go down and they go up again. They do. You just have to be tenacious and adjust your expenses according to the situation.
Exactly. And just test new ideas and, see what works and what doesn't.
But
Exactly.
real estate's a special case, of course, because of
Mm.
what we're seeing with commercial real estate, with interest rates. That's getting reduced. I mean, the situation is mitigating somewhat there, and what's going on with some of the city centers, courtesy of COVID.
Mm.
There's a lot of commercial real estate churn and frustration and losses, which are affecting some of the
It
regional
seems
banks.
that your job is so difficult, Rod, because at least in real estate, it almost seems like real estate is predictable. If I
Mhm.
get if you look at a multi-family deal or an office
Mhm.
deal, because there's all kinds of info, but in
Yeah.
your business, how do you know if a company that comes through that wants to raise capital is going to be, are they going to gain traction, especially during times that are tough when investors have been,
Yeah,
pulling
yeah. Well,
back from.
you're right, but it's what I've been doing for most of my career, is
Right.
doing high tech startup companies.
Mm.
Personally, I'm a big time real estate investor, so I'm active in the space
Ah.
myself for obvious reasons. But yes, so you're right, but
Mm.
if I can't understand it, then we shouldn't be marketing it, because it's how can we possibly market it easily to convince people that they should be interested if I can't understand it? So that's one test, but that's not normally a problem. Biotech companies, you can understand it and love it, and it can be major league appealing to investors. That does not mean that the FDA will approve it,
I was going to
or,
say,
or that it'll turn out to be effective once push comes to shove. So there is
yeah.
always risk. There's always risk, right?
I invested in a company some years ago. It's a little startup, and
Hmm.
I made a small investment. It was literally a startup, like out of a university.
Yeah, yeah,
Two
yeah,
students came out with this thing,
yeah.
and that was my first exposure to going through FDA approvals. I was like, oh my goodness! I mean, they came out the other end, and I did very well on the investment. But
Yeah,
yes, I don't know how they did it. I mean, the FDA is it's like a
yeah, it's a
fraction.
science unto itself. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, with the
Yeah.
experience, with the experience that I have, and I'm sure you have too, that we know that there are so many other tripping hazards, because you can have a great company with a great
Mm.
product, whether it's a medicine or something else. That does not mean just because they're in the right place at the right time with the right product or service that they will win, because there's so many stupid things that companies do that shoot themselves in the foot.
Mm.
And sometimes they have to do it repeatedly, and they do. I mean,
It's this is I guess gets to my point. If you understand the space, the
mhm.
risk is considerably diminished. When I think
Yes,
about
yes, yes.
biomed and the FDA, to me, that is just massive high risk. To me, it's begging for failure all the way along. If you know what you're doing, it isn't. So it's just the
Yeah, yeah.
kind of thing. Rod,
So, yeah,
let me
yeah.
ask you three sign-off questions,
All
if I.
right, all right.
These are what I think of as rapid fire questions. Should have prepped you on these, but there's one in
Yes.
particular I'm going to ask you at the end.
All right.
So, first thing I usually ask is related to real estate.
Mhm.
Why should real estate pros, but in your case, really anybody, why should business people be looking at AI today? Why should they even care?
Well, they should care because it's a way to reduce costs and increase efficiency. And frankly, the biggest issue is that if their competitors do adopt AI efficiently, they will lose out. and they'll end up losing market share and potentially lose the whole enchilada. So you have to use the current instruments, the current tools in order to stay competitive. Like 30 years ago, 25 years ago, there were a lot of people that didn't use the internet and their businesses ran just fine, but that is no longer true, right? This is the same thing with large language models and other applications of AI. You have to stay abreast of the current technologies and use them prudently in order to prosper and succeed long term. You might get away for a while without doing so, but long term you have to.
Thank you. Perfect for that soundbite, Rod. I
Oh,
should put
good.
that at the beginning of the podcast to introduce it to everybody. It's just perfect.
All right, good.
All right, so fess up. How do you use AI on a daily basis, assuming that you do? Like
Yeah,
what
I do. Yeah, I do. I use ChatGPT and I use Claude from Perplexity AI, and I tend to prefer Claude, but I like them both, and they're very powerful.
what do you
So
use them for? Yeah.
all sorts of searches to do with business, to do with my personal life. I had an eye procedure, and I was in the waiting room with a few minutes, and I wanted, the eye doctor was going to give me these eye drops that I knew were going to blow me away, and I wanted a weaker version, but I didn't know where to get it from, and if she didn't have a source, she wasn't going to prescribe it. So I went on and used ChatGPT in the waiting room, and it found three vendors, and I asked it for the highest rated vendor, and it gave me them, and it had their name and address and phone number, and I gave it to the doctor, and she made a prescription for exactly what I wanted. Then I got the prescription, and it was far better than
Oh, goodness
the
me.
knock on the head I'd have had from the full-on medicine that she was otherwise going to prescribe. So that's an example. I was having difficulty getting a vendor to do work on two awnings at my house. It was really irritating the hell out of me that neither of them was working, but the people who should have provided that service wouldn't. And after having asked my admin assistant to find a source, which she couldn't, I went and I used Perplexity AI and found a vendor. And then we called in the vendor, and they did a good job for a fair price. Simple, obvious things, but
Mhm.
AI is enabling
I tell
us
you
to
something.
multiply our efficiency. And there are so many other things you could do. These are just two
Yeah,
examples.
it's phenomenal that you described that actually. I mean, I've almost stopped using Google search. I
Yep.
use it very rarely
Yep.
these days. Certainly not. I mean, to do any kind of analytical work, it's incredibly cumbersome.
Yeah, well, it is. It's clumsy. And the truth is, even if you set aside ChatGPT and similar and just look at Google search or internet search in general in recent years versus 10 years ago, it's drastically less efficient. There's so much commercial clutter
Ah,
getting in the way. It's become irritating, right? And now this evolution of intelligent search and leveraged effect is changing that in a big way.
okay, so my last question.
Mhm,
So for anybody who is listening or watching who doesn't
mhm,
have, is not likely to be getting eye drops or need awning
mhm.
fixing
Yeah, yeah.
at their house, what would you advise them if they've not really been playing around with the AI yet? Give
Mhm.
them a task or something that they could do that would just give them an easy win, like oh my goodness, like a eureka moment. Oh my
Yeah,
God,
yeah.
no idea what to do.
Okay, so I mean, off the top of my head, um, first set the stage by telling the large language model, do whatever it takes. Start off with a phrase like that. Do whatever it takes to find me the solution to this question, and then go into the question, and provide me a detailed response, including experienced reviewers or review experience reviews from people who have experienced the service or product, right? That makes it more and more likely to give you a quality result. And then define what it is that you want to see, and be prepared to ask follow-up questions and correct and adjust. And I want to mention actually another thing that I've been using ChatGPT for is their speech recognition is streets ahead of any other kind of speech recognition that I have found at any other place. So I'll sometimes use it for dictation because when I use any other form of dictation, there's so many errors that get introduced. ChatGPT's transcription of dictation is absolutely first class. So I do that, and then I accelerate the production of new articles or whatever it might be. That's something that's uniquely productive wherever you may be in whatever type of activity you pursue.
Well, the other thing, Rod, it's a lot of fun as well. You know,
Hmm.
I use occasionally ChatGPT on my phone, the app.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess
yeah,
it must be somehow I managed to connect it to my paid account. I'm not actually sure how I did that, but it
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
you can actually chat with it. So, and it comes through the speakers in the car.
yeah, yeah,
So sometimes I'll just put it in, I'll just hook it up and say, okay, what are the news headlines today?
yeah,
What is the FT saying about that?
yeah, yeah. Superb.
Is NPR, doing anything? My kids play 20 questions. So
Yeah,
instead of
yeah,
sitting on a
yeah,
device, they'll play 20 questions. It goes back and forth. Tell me
yeah.
a joke.
Yeah, yeah, superb, superb. Yeah, yeah. I haven't been doing those things. Thanks for fueling my imagination. I'll play with some of that stuff.
It's fun.
I was
Yeah.
looking to set up a date, and I wanted interesting venues for a date. And ChatGPT gave me some neat places that I didn't know about. Within 15-mile radius of here. I'm in San Diego, and yeah, yeah. I was very pleased with the
Well,
results
that
because
reminds me of the movie Her, where he fell in love with the
oh yeah,
with
yeah,
the
that was a little bit
computer.
that was a weird movie. I enjoyed that, but it was a bit weird. I gather that personality inspired Sam Altman, right? The voice.
Is that right? Is that
Yeah, yeah, he copied that voice in ChatGPT and then got told off for that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Rod Turner, your founder and presumably COO, CEO,
CEO and chairman,
CEO and
all the
chairman,
titles. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Manhattan Street Capital.
yeah.
As always, what a pleasure seeing you again. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, Adam. I enjoyed it myself. Great, great stuff, and I hope the audience found this informative. Cheers.
All right, that was Rod Turner, who is chairman, CEO, and everything else of Manhattan Street Capital. Rod, really good to see you. It's a real pleasure. I wonder if we'll ever meet in person one day. It is nice to see you on the podcast again. And really, thanks for sharing all your insights into the chatbot. I did find that particularly interesting. And we are not quite as quite the as sharp an edge of regulations as you are in the Reg A world and dealing with FINRA. So it was definitely interesting to hear your comments about how chatbots can cross lines a lot easier than they can in my world, where most people just ask, what is the IRR or something basic like that. So anyway, really good to see you, Rod. Thanks for joining me. And thank you, dear viewers, also for joining us today. If you're not subscribed to my newsletter, go to gowercrowd.com, click the subscribe button top right, and you'll see some of the other companies, or some of the companies that some of our subscribers work for. It's very cool, and you will be in good company. So all there at gowercrowd.com, hit the subscribe button top right on the screen. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, it's Adam Gower signing off.